There's nothing more awkward than being ignored in a situation. You know when you're in a group and you try and speak up and share your opinion and you just get ignored? No one acknowledges you when you have like an opinion or suggestion. Or better yet, you do speak up and like people laugh at you because what you said wasn't like good enough. I have had this too many times to count, and someone who's been on both sides. I've been that person that's being ignored, and then I'm in a group and I see someone else being ignored. I've learned the hard way what it takes to be more memorable in a social situation, so you can finally have the confidence and speak up in every conversation. Hey, if you're new, I'm Christina and I make videos for people who are feeling lonely. If you're a people pleaser, overachiever, over anything else, you're in the right place. Stop saying I have nothing to say. I used to say this so much. I'd sit there in a group, 4 or 5 people. I kind of feel like I should say something. Everyone else is talking back and forth, so many opinions, so many ideas, and I'm just sat there like, I feel like I should speak up. I look really awkward. I look really quiet. I don't want them to think that I'm like a weirdo who has nothing to say. But low-key, as I'm sat there, I'm like, I have nothing to say. But if you're watching, this is your last day of saying I have nothing to say. Remove that from your vocab. Instead, what you need to say is, everything that needs to be said has been said. Stop forcing yourself and putting pressure on yourself to like come up with new interesting things to say. Like, it's totally okay if the group just carries on talking back and forth without you. Like, that's totally okay. Why? Because everything that needs to be said has been said. Like, a lot of the times with social situations, when things aren't going well and you feel left out and you feel awkward, I promise you, most of the time, it's you putting pressure on yourself. When I've been that person that is like in a group and I'm talking and I'm engaged, I've got things to say, and I see someone else who's been a bit quiet, I'm never thinking in my head like, why aren't they talking? Like, that literally never comes to my mind. I'm never looking at them like they're weird or like, why aren't you saying anything? I'm just thinking like, oh, like they've got nothing to say at the moment. Like, that's cool. A lot of us that aren't used to social interaction and we're a bit socially awkward, sometimes when we do get the chance to be in a conversation, we actually are like trying to force ourselves to perform rather than be genuine and come across like our normal selves, like laid back, chill, like really relaxed. Rather than that, we're trying to put on a bit of a mask and perform to the group to prove to them that we are cool and interesting. Because you're so insecure about the fact that you're not cool and interesting, you're actually putting pressure on yourselves to do that in like a performative way. Kind of like, rather than this conversation being a chance for you to just show up and engage, you're giving yourself the pressure to show up and perform. It's not enough for you to just sit back and like take it all in, say something here and there. Like, you're putting pressure on yourself and you're panicking in your mind to say something interesting, something cool. Like, I don't want to just say like anything. Like, I want to say something like important. Like, you're putting so much pressure on yourself. One thing I will say is, if you are in these sorts of conversations and like you're thinking I have nothing to say, when really it's everything that needs to be said has been said, like, embrace the pause. It's totally okay for there to be pauses. There actually should be pauses. Sometimes in a conversation, I actually take a step back and I'm like, I'm not going to talk when there's like just constant talking and there's no pauses. Like, people are talking over each other. It's like a little bit rude, and it's like who wants to engage in that? Socially confident people are really comfortable with pauses, and they're very okay with like a little bit of a lull in the conversation. Like, a lot of the times nowadays when I have conversations, there's always pauses. Like, I don't see a good conversation as like there was constant talking. That's not a good convo to me. Like, it's totally okay for there to be like a little bit of a lull. Give yourself time to think, breather, sip your water or whatever it is. Like, embrace the pause. Good conversation is not your responsibility. You are not their entertainment. You are not Netflix. You are not there to make them laugh, to make them cry, to make them like grip onto the edge of their seat. Like, you are not their entertainment. Don't give yourself that responsibility. People pleasing is such a disease that it makes you think that absolutely everything that you do is for other people. Even the basic human need of human connection and conversating with someone, like, people pleasing makes you think that is actually, it's not for you, this conversation, it's for them. And you feel like you have to perform and like be interesting and funny and say cool things. And that article that I read, like, you want to seem smart and cool and intelligent. Like, you are not their entertainment. You are not their Netflix account. You do not need to perform. When I used to be socially like anxious and awkward, I would actually take like a little bit of a mental note about how my conversations went. When I was 15, I would like go home and be like, oh, I had a really good conversation today. Or like, oh yeah, that conversation didn't go well. Like, she seemed like she didn't really like me that much. I seemed a bit awkward. Or like, oh, that one did go really well. Like, we got along so well. She seemed like she liked me. Like, I was taking a mental note of it. And when I think back, it's like partly cute, partly embarrassing. And I know a lot of that mental tracking that I did was actually just for me and for me to work on my own confidence and socially like coming out of my shell. But to some extent, you might actually tip it the wrong way and give yourself the burden of like trying to impress people and like entertain people. As a people pleaser, one of your biggest challenges when it comes to this sort of thing is going to be having a conversation with someone and they don't think that you're interesting. And that's totally okay. Maybe it happens already. I'm sure you probably have conversations where you're like, yeah, they think I'm very boring. That's okay. But like, you're making yourself think that that's a bad thing. That's normal. I have that to this day. Like, it's totally okay that people think that you're boring or you didn't say enough, you didn't talk enough, you weren't interesting enough. That's okay. That's part of life. Not only is that part of life, that's just part of being a human. Sometimes when you're a people pleaser, I feel like you force yourself to be on like 100% level 10 energy, high energy all the time, smiling all the time, like do you know what I mean? Like you feel like you have to show up at like your max level all the time, and it's never for you, it's always for other people. Like deep down you might be having a rough day, like I don't know, you slept through your alarm, you forgot to have breakfast, you're running late to school, you've not dressed properly, you've forgotten something at home, like you're having a rough day, but despite all that, you'll still try to show up with like a huge smile on your face and so much energy, and then not only that, you're gonna go into conversations with people and like force yourself to talk and to be interesting, and like it's never for you. People pleasing is an inevitable route to burnout. It's a matter of time before you expend all the energy that you have and like all the empathetic just energy that you have, and you actually just get fed up and you're like, I'm exhausted. You're not giving yourself enough time to replenish and like take a step back. Let me just take it all in for a sec. Let me just have a moment to myself. I'm not putting on a mask. Like, give yourself permission to have low energy for a day, or give yourself permission to not be like on your performance mode for a day. I promise you'll feel better because of it. Only smile half of the time. When it comes to social confidence as well, a lot of the time you'll watch videos, podcasts, read books, and they'll tell you to smile more. I think if you're a people pleaser, this isn't good advice, because you probably smile a lot already. I know for me, I was a huge smiler, like when I was a bit younger, and like literally walking down the street, I'd be smiling. Like anyone that walked past me, I'd be like, I don't know, you cross paths with someone. Like, we need to smile less. And let me tell you, I don't think it's like, there's no extremes. You don't have to smile all the time like I did, or go to being like super stoic and like a straight face. There's an in-between, there's a medium era. There's a medium spot where you actually just smile when you have eye contact with the person, and then you smile, or you only smile if like you know the person. Like, it's totally okay to not smile at strangers. One thing I do recommend is don't smile straight away. Like, I used to do this thing where like I'd instantly smile any person that I'd walk past, smile. Like, don't do that. That's giving desperate. Socially being respected, it's not actually to do with what you're saying and how you show up in the conversation. It's a lot to do with confidence. If you come across that you're not confident, socially, I think people have like a little bit less expectation for you. Over smiling can sometimes make you look very just available and open. And open is a good thing, but like just looking like too available and too accessible to everyone. People like a little bit of exclusivity. Like, people like when things are just reserved for them. So definitely smile less. Okay, so imagine now you're making a little bit of progress in these group situations. Now in groups, you're totally cool with being a little bit quiet. You're embracing the pause. You're smiling a little bit less. You're coming across more confident to people now. Like, oh, she seems cool and mysterious. And maybe now you've really internalized the fact that a good conversation with someone is not your responsibility. Like, you are not their Netflix. Like, you don't need to entertain them. You're totally cool with that. You will honestly start to build up a picture of just being a more confident person, like comfortable in your own skin. And let me tell you, that's really appealing and attractive in a social situation. Like, nothing is more unsettling actually than someone who looks uncomfortable in their own skin. But on to my next tip. When you do feel comfy to talk about yourself and stuff, share stories about yourself. You can have a conversation with anyone, but it doesn't mean that you'll connect with them. And chances are you clicked on this video because you want to have more conversations, you want to be more memorable, you want people to remember who you are, you don't want to be like a forgettable person. What separates you being forgettable to like, oh my god, I remember her, is you sharing stories about yourself. When I think back to some of my times in the hospitals, when I'm on the wards because I'm a medical student, the patients that I remember the most are some of the ones that had like the most insane diseases, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe you survived that. But also the patients that like tell me like a personal story about them. Like I was talking about this on TikTok, but there was a guy who was like a middle-aged man, really successful looking, like really well groomed, put together, like super well cut hair, if you know what I mean. Me and him were talking about his job, and he pretty much just opened up about how much he hates his job. He earns so much money, like he's doing very well for himself. But the fact that he hates his job just makes his life miserable. And he was saying like, I like, okay, yeah, I make a lot of money from my job, but I would never ever recommend this to like my kids. And all the stuff that I do love doing, I have to do on the weekends because I'm like so busy during the week. I remember we spoke about this a lot in depth, and I was asking him like so many philosophical questions about like life and like money and what we really want in life. Because if it's not money, then what is it? And like just the fact that he told me a personal story about himself and like we connected, like it like he's so memorable. Like I remember him, like, and I don't think I'll forget him, because that story was obviously a super deep one and it was very philosophical. But you can have a conversation and be forgotten. What will make you be remembered is just sharing a story about yourself. And that's like a deep example. You can just share like minor things, like little things where like, I don't know, like you messed up. Maybe you ran for the bus one time and like the bus drove past, as they always do, because they never stop you when you're running. The reason why no one remembers those small talk, little minor conversations that you have to people about the weather or about what's on the news is because there's no story there. There's no personal connection. And I can't emphasize this enough. Just because you've had a conversation with someone doesn't mean that you've connected with them. A lot of you guys that watch these videos, I know that you don't just want a conversation, you want to connect. And really, to connect, you have to share like little moments about you and little moments about what you've been through. And you might be like, Christina, like how do I share stories about myself? Like what if they don't ask about me? Well, you need to ask about them. A great conversation always has an element of like back and forth. Like you ask about them, they ask about you. Like, do you know what I mean? It just goes back and forth. It's like a chill, easygoing conversation. Sometimes people are really annoying and they don't ask about you and they only ever talk about themselves, and that is very awkward and very annoying. I've actually made a video entirely about this. But what I'd recommend, like if you're in the right conversation, someone's asking about you, you're asking about them, try to ask really like open, broad questions. Avoid things that have like yes or no answers or like one word answers. Like if someone's gone on holiday and you're asking about where they went, like don't be like, oh, how many days did you go for? 7. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, it was good. Like, try to ask more like, what did you get up to when you were there? Like, would you go back again? Like, stuff that you can ask and it's more like explorative rather than like definitive yes, no. Okay, the next one is an absolute life hack. Ask them about their expertise. I was reading this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. You've probably heard of it if you're watching this video. And in the book, he was talking about the fact that people love to talk about themselves. People like to talk about their lives, what they're up to, what their plans are. But even more than that, people love to feel important and celebrated. So if you can ask someone about an area that they're an expert in, or ask them about something that they're passionate about, that they're really good at, then they will talk and yap for ages. Because sometimes I think, you know, when you're not talking in a group, it's not always a problem if like you're listening to someone and like they're responding to your question. Like you've played a vital role in that conversation and they're responding to you. It's more so a problem when you just feel like you're watching. Like you're a bystander on that conversation and you're on the outside, you're just looking in. That's normally when it's a problem. So if you can ask someone about themselves, ask them about their expertise. People love to talk about what they're good at. Moving on to my next point, you have to open up to get them to open up. If the conversation goes deeper, you're going to connect. And if you connect, you're going to be memorable. For that to happen and for you to be memorable, you have to talk about some deep stuff. When it comes to talking about deep stuff, a lot of the times I find like you can't go straight in at the deep end and ask about someone's like trauma and life and like whether or not you find your job miserable. Like when I think about that guy that I was talking to, it was very surface level. We're talking about his like medical problem. Like we spoke about that for ages. And then eventually I think I opened up about the fact that like I don't know sometimes if I want to do medicine. Like I think about this every day, but like I don't fully know if I want to be a doctor like forever. My plan right now is to do it for a year or two and then see if I want to do it long term. But when I told him that, I opened up. He then opened up about his job and he spoke about like, you know, you think medicine's bad, well my job's bad, and and we eventually got there. Opening up and being vulnerable is very addictive. Like I don't know about you guys, but whenever I see those videos where a YouTuber has like a really boring thumbnail, just a photo of them, and they've got like a really like shocking title, like this is my last video, or my divorce story, my heartbreak story, and it's like them just being vulnerable and opening up. I find it so interesting. Like it's just so interesting when people do open up and share like the vulnerable side of them. Similarly, that's the case in real life. Like when you open up and share a part of you that you don't normally talk about, or people see a new side of you, that is going to stick in their minds. And a lot of the time as well, I feel like when you do open up, people just have so much respect for you. Like when that guy told me his story about his job and hating it and stuff, I just had so much respect for him. Like it's a tough pill to swallow that a career that you've been in for decades, you find it miserable. It's a lot of respect to admit that to yourself and then open up about it to someone else. Because I know for men, especially middle-aged, I don't know what generation he is, but like an older generational male, it's obviously like, you know, your work is your reputation, and it says a lot about your status, and like, I don't know, it's very like prideful for a lot of people. So for him to open up and talk about that really openly, I had so much respect for him. And last chapter, take things less personally. In the past, I took things really personally, but I wasn't having very good conversations. Whereas now, I do not take things personally, but I have a lot better conversations. I don't know whether they're linked, because a lot has changed in that time, and it's more than just taking things personally and stuff. But I definitely think taking things less personally absolutely takes the pressure off of these conversations. And that in itself is a large factor in why you might be having not as good conversations. The conversation didn't go well, and that says something about me. Like, there's something wrong with me because that girl looked at me weird and she didn't say bye, I said bye, and she just walked off, and that says something about me. And you can do that, but it's so counterproductive. It does not move the needle forward at all when it comes to like coming out of your shell more and like being more of who you want to be, being more confident in social situations. What does move the needle is actually like not caring and like taking it less personally. Like, okay, she walked off and just like ignored me. Whatever. I've got other people to talk to. Or I told that guy that story about how I ran for the bus and the bus walked past and he just like laughed at me. He didn't say anything about himself. Like, well, I shared that story for me anyway. I did it for myself. I didn't do it for him. In a weird way, I feel like when you care less, you actually get more. It's so counterintuitive. You think it's the opposite, but like not caring socially gets you more socially. Don't ask me why, it just does. But actually, okay, so maybe I do know why it does. I feel like sometimes when you're an overachiever, really smart, really hardworking, people pleaser, like you're so used to adding, like you're so used to working more and like saying more, smiling more. You're so used to adding and just like piling things up. But actually what you want, being connection and being like people seeing you and you seeing them and just having like a human connection, like you really know that person, that's a lot of stripping back. And that's a lot of like taking things away, being vulnerable, being just the bare you. Imagine like you're the overachiever, you're the super hardworking person. Imagine like you're like a supercar, like you're super like quick, you're a red shiny Lamborghini Ferrari. Imagine you just eat like, because you're a supercar, you easily go quickly on like the highway, like you accelerate super fast, you're like above the speed limit, like you're a hazard, you're dangerous. But that's you like normally because you're a supercar. But then imagine like other people are just like a regular Honda, like they don't go as quick as you. So that means you, to stay safe on the highway, you actually need to strip back a bit just to stay like in line with everyone else and stay safe and stuff. Does that analogy make sense? Let me know in the comments. But overall, what I do think is that when you're like a high pressure, anxious person, high stakes, super hardworking, sometimes with these social situations, care less to get more. You just need to strip it back a little bit. Thank you, family, for watching this video. That's another TED Talk in the books. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know what video I should make next, because I read all of the comments and I want to know what you guys want to see next. So thank you so much for watching. Bye.